Melted chocolate bar. That doesn't sound like the beginning of one of the most important inventions of the 20th century. But it is, because right now, somewhere in the world, someone is standing in front of a machine that heats food in seconds. They press a button. They wait. They never think about where it came from. They have no idea it started with a man, a candy bar, and a machine built for war. Let me tell you what really happened. The year is 1945. The place is a laboratory in Massachusetts, owned by a company called Raytheon. World War II is ending, and this company builds one of the most important weapons of the entire war. Not a gun, not a bomb. Radar. And at the center of that radar is a strange device called a magnetron, a tube that produces invisible waves of energy. These waves helped Allied ships and planes see enemies in the dark, through fog, across the ocean. Here's something most people don't know. The heart of it, the cavity magnetron, wasn't even American. It was invented in Britain in 1940 by two physicists working in secret. It was so powerful, so important, that the British smuggled it across the Atlantic in a black metal box and handed it to the Americans to mass produce. And the company chosen to build it by the thousands? Raytheon. The magnetron helped win the war. But nobody understood what else it could do. Except one man. His name was Percy Spencer. And here's the strange part. Percy Spencer should never have been in that room. He was orphaned before he was old enough to remember his father. He left school at 12 years old. He never finished grammar school. He had almost no formal education at all. But Percy had something schools can't teach: curiosity. As a boy, he taught himself electricity by reading everything he could find. As a boy, he wired one of the first electrified paper mills in his town, a teenager, self-taught, with no training at all. Later, he joined the Navy just to learn about radio. And somehow, this self-taught kid with no diploma became one of the most respected engineers in the entire company. During the war, he redesigned how magnetrons were built and pushed production from a slow trickle to over 2,000 a day. By 1945, Percy Spencer knew more about magnetrons than almost anyone alive. So he's standing there, next to a running magnetron, doing his job, and then he notices something. Something in his pocket feels wrong. He reaches in and finds that the peanut candy bar he'd been saving has turned into a warm, melted mess. Now think about that for a second. Most people would have been annoyed. A ruined snack, a sticky pocket. They'd wipe their hand, throw it away, and forget it ever happened. Most people would have ignored it. Percy didn't, because Percy asked a question that changed the world. Why did it melt? There was no heat in the room, no flame, no stove. The chocolate hadn't melted from the outside. It had melted from something invisible. And Percy Spencer had a suspicion. This is where things get really interesting. The next day he came back. But this time, he brought something with him. Popcorn kernels. He placed them near the magnetron. And he watched. And the kernels started to jump, to burst, to pop, bouncing across the lab, all on their own. Percy Spencer had just made the world's first microwave popcorn. But he wasn't done. The next test is the one everyone remembers. He took an egg, a whole raw egg. He placed it near the machine and leaned in close to watch what would happen. A curious colleague leaned in too. And the egg, trembling, building pressure from the inside, did exactly what an egg full of invisible energy does. It exploded, right into his co-worker's face. Objective: study microwave heating. Result: egg attacks colleague. But hidden inside that mess was one of the most important discoveries of the century. Those invisible waves weren't just floating through the air. They were exciting the water molecules inside the food, making them vibrate billions of times per second. And that vibration created heat from the inside out. The food wasn't being warmed by fire. It was cooking itself. Nobody had ever done that before. In all of human history, cooking meant one thing: fire, wood, coal, gas, flame. Percy Spencer had just found another way, a way humans had never even imagined. And Raytheon knew exactly what they were holding. That same year, they filed the patent. 2 years later, in 1947, they released the very first microwave oven to the world. It was called the radar range, and it was a monster. It stood almost 6 feet tall. It weighed around 750 pounds, heavier than a grand piano. It needed to be connected to plumbing because it required water cooling, and it cost about $5,000. In today's money, that's roughly $60,000. $60,000 to reheat your coffee. So, no, it didn't exactly fly off the shelves. For years, the microwave was a giant expensive machine used only in ships, ocean liners, railroad cars, and a handful of restaurants. Something the average family would never own. But engineers kept working, kept shrinking it, kept improving it. And then, in 1967, 22 years after a candy bar melted in a man's pocket, a company called Amana, now owned by Raytheon, released something new. A countertop microwave, small enough to sit in a kitchen, priced under $500. For the first time, an ordinary family could actually own one, and slowly, decade by decade, the impossible machine got smaller, and cheaper, and simpler. Until one day, it fit on a kitchen counter in almost every home in America. Then almost every kitchen on Earth. Think about what that actually means. For thousands of years, humans gathered around fire to cook. It was one of the things that made us human. And then a man who left school at 12, holding a melted candy bar, quietly changed the ritual older than civilization itself. Percy Spencer received a patent for his discovery. His reward for one of the greatest kitchen inventions in history? A $2 bonus. That's it, $2. But Percy never seemed to care much about money. He kept working, kept inventing. He earned around 300 patents in his lifetime. And he never lost the one thing that made all of it possible. That refusal to ignore the strange little detail everyone else walks past. Because that's the real lesson here. The magnetron was smuggled across an ocean and built by brilliant minds to win a war. But the microwave, the thing that ended up in your home, wasn't planned by any of them. It came from a melted chocolate bar. And one man who couldn't stop asking why. Sometimes the biggest discoveries begin with something everyone else ignores. So tonight, when you press that button, when you hear that hum, when you watch last night's dinner come back to life in 90 seconds, remember, it wasn't invented in a plan. It wasn't designed on purpose. It was born from a machine of war, a ruined snack, and one impossibly curious mind that refused to look away. The world wasn't built perfectly. Some of its greatest inventions were simply accidentally created.